Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode. I am Michael Petrow, and joining me on the show this week is Canadian costume designer Patti Henderson. Patti Henderson has 24 years of versatile costume design experience under her belt, guys. Throughout her exciting career, she's worked at every level with the costume department, gaining experience that she's applied to a variety of projects, such as the Chucky franchise, A Dog's Journey, starring Dennis Quaid, filmed in Manitoba, The Capture of the Green River Killer, and many more. Patti's talent will be showcased once again. It's already been showcased in the 2021 titles Nobody, starring Bob Odenkirk, done by Universal, and Flag Day, directed and starring Sean Penn. In addition to these many credits, she's also worked directly with distinguished actors such as Keanu Reeves, Samuel L. Jackson, Josh Brolin, Michael Fassbender, and as previously mentioned, Dennis Quaid, with a multitude of acclaimed studios under her belt such as Universal, DreamWorks, AMC, and Endeavor. We get to talk about her time at Cannes Film Festival this year with Flag Day, how that whole story went down, how she met Sean Penn. That's a great story. She's got stories for days. She's got an eye for needle and thread. She's a lovely lady to speak to. We're going to have all her contact information there. She also runs a vintage shop as well, too. Great style, this lady, man. If she could dress me, I would let her do it every goddamn day. So, Patti, thank you so much for saying yes to my weird Facebook message. I much appreciate it, and I know our listeners will, too. I don't have anything for housekeeping for you guys this week. No new updates to really anything, so we can skip that shit. If this is your first time, stick around for like another minute. This is your 114th time. Head on into the theater, the proverbial theater. Get your snacks, get your drinks, get ready for a fun conversation. To the new people, the ones who've pressed play for the first time, thank you so much for doing so. You've taken a chance, and we appreciate it. At the end of this, please go back, listen to a couple other episodes. We implore you because there's a lot of funny, weird, dumb shit there, and we pride ourselves on being funny, weird, and dumb. That being said, when you're done, one or two more episodes, maybe 5 or 10, whatever you want to listen to, no pressure, go and subscribe. That's the cheap, easy, and free way to do it. If you like what you hear and you want to support us, subscribe. We'll show up each and every Wednesday with a new dumb topic, and hopefully we'll make you laugh. If you're inclined to do more than that, there's two ways to do so. You can go to our donation tab if you want, throw a couple, $2 at us. If you're from Canada, throw a toonie our way. All goes back into production costs, guys. It just makes the show better. And then we get to blame you, and you get to be like an executive, like a co-executive producer kind of thing. And then there's also our prop shop, our merch stand, right? It's on threadless.com. Lots of comfy clothing there, lots of weird gadgets and gizmos and whatnot. You can buy skateboards from us, fully set up or just the deck, cell phone covers, socks, shoes, hats, sweaters. All the podcast swag that you can think of is there. No pressure to do either, but I'm just saying, if you're like, we like these guys, how do we make them better? How do you lift us up? That's how you do so. You do one of those three things. But subscribing is key. If we can remind you of one thing, that would be it. At this point in the show, we like to thank the top 10 places that are screaming about us around the world. Maybe you'll be one of them after you've pressed play a couple times, and we'll see you show up on the list. So, number 10, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, still hanging around from last week. Washington, more Manitoba. Baconia, Neverville. Then we jump to Smithers, British Columbia, and Vancouver, British Columbia. That's courtesy of our resident debater, Martin Navarro. I'm sure he's spreading the good word out there. But to all you Vancouver and Smithers people, whoever you are, thank you so much for listening to the show. Concord, North Carolina, and Boardman, you've been with us for a couple months now. We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at thereeldebaters@gmail.com. Tell us who you are. Tell us what kind of movies and TV shows you like, and we'll give you a shout-out on the show. We'll embarrass you. We'll probably embarrass us more, but you know what I mean. And then finally, the top two places, Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Winnipeg, Manitoba. I still don't know why my metrics say two different places, even though it's the same fucking place. Needless to say, to our Winnipeg fans, we love you. To everybody who listens here, we love it when you do. But these are just, like I said, the top 10 places that are doing some heavy lifting. I have said too much. I have gone too long. You've probably skipped already. Long story, even longer, but now we'll make it short. I will cue the reel, and you enjoy the show.
Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel. Here is a motion picture film, 1,000 feet, 16,000 separate photographs.
Welcome, everybody, to the official space section of the chart.
The truth! You can't handle the truth! Sir, you're out of order. Out of order? I show you out of order!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Reel Debaters production. No debates, no rousing conversation with Mark and myself and any of the other guys. We got lucky enough to get an interview with costume designer Patti Henderson. Say hello, Patti.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for. See, we're we don't pretend to be a big deal. So when anyone says yes to us, the whole chat room just lights up. Wow, that's awesome. Someone thinks we're great enough to talk to. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I love to talk about my process. So let's do this.
Delicious. Okay, so we can't find out how you got to where you are today without finding out how you started. So
Yep.
let's do the origin story and check that box. What got you into film?
Sure. Short version, long version. How about if I give you the medium version?
Yeah, whatever. We can edit. So go.
Sure,
as you want.
sure. Yeah, I was, I was a young mom. I started, I think I was 21 when I had my first child, and my then husband was working for IATSE Local 63,
Okay.
the stage side of things, and he was also working at another company that I can't remember if it folded, whatever. He lost his job, so I had to get out there into the workforce, and I found I was working, a multitude of obnoxious jobs to make ends meet. And then through him, I met some people that were, I guess, Local 856 wasn't even, IATSE wasn't even there yet. They were all part of Local 63, and there was a small film community. There was a film in town, Kiefer Sutherland's Jane Seymour, Woman Wanted, I think it was called. And then there was a kids' TV series, YTV, The Adventures of Shirley Holmes. And they knew that I stitched, I sewed my kids' clothes, whatever. I worked at fabric stores, that basic kind of thing. And they said, "Hey, do you want to come and work on a series?" And I said, "I don't know how to do this. I have no idea. I know that the only thing I knew about film was was not shot in chronological order." I said, "Sure, okay, I'll try this." So they threw me onto the set, threw me into the wolves, if you will. I became the truck costumer on that YTV series, and I said, this is kind of fun. I learned on the job, no schooling, lots of training from some really, really talented people in Winnipeg in the film industry. Thought, I'll do it for 5 years, make some money and
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, figure out what I want to do. It's 25 years later and I'm still doing it.
So obviously you got bit and you turned into the costume designer that you are today.
Well, absolutely. Where else in the world can you work for 6 months and take 6 months off,
Yeah, with the day job that I have, working so closely with you guys, I've often flirted with the idea, but it is that I'm a routine based person. I grew up, I still struggle with adult ADD. So routine for me is a big deal, right? As much as it feels like I'm creating my own simulation, it gets me through the day. So that's the only drawback, but I get it. Like it's like let work super hard like you would for a full year, and then just pace yourself, and then create something if you want, or do something else for a minute and come back to it. Like it's always there for you. Where did your love of stitching come from then? If it really wasn't something you had, like I have a soft spot for costume designers, is where I'm getting. My mother stitches a ton of stuff. I grew up in Fabricland. I grew up around sewing machines and stitchers and whatnot. And I still do. Like every time I come over, I've got pillows in here with the Mandalorian and Yoda on them that my mom made just for my birthday.
Yeah.
I still get this
That's
stuff.
So funny. I started at about the age of 4. It was my mom stitched, and I was really, really drawn to it. I was super into Barbie dolls. This is the early 70s we're talking about.
Yeah.
And, my parents couldn't afford to buy me all those pink outfits and things like that. And I wanted to learn how to make my own. So literally started with a tube dress on my mom's sewing machine, age 4 or 5. But I went to Vincent Massey High School, and they had a fantastic home ec department. And I learned a lot from the teachers there. And I learned a lot from my friends' mothers, because it was the 70s. People sewed their own clothes. It's a dying art, let me tell you. But it was just something that I think I was born with. I loved it. I still sew for myself today, just because it's about putting your brain where your hands are. Mental health over this COVID, keeping yourself sane. And I did a lot of sewing just for fun, just to keep my brain somewhere that wasn't, looking on the computer to see how many numbers we had today.
Yeah, no, right. And I think that was the biggest battle was an
Mhm.
active brain as opposed to just, okay, I'm just going to absorb all of this drama and have nothing. My mom still does too. Like she worked in medical clinics all of her life. So she's always been in the blues and the greens, but instead of going with the blues and the greens, she put her own zhuzh on it, and like Marvin the Martian and like Warner Brothers, right? She has this whole line of things, and like I'm like, you need to get onto Etsy and make a side hustle at this, because if you're too good to not do it. So
Well, and I do have a side hustle doing that to keep the brain busy. You know, I repair, I collect and repair and bring back to life vintage clothing, and I sell it
Really?
online. I do. Yeah.
oh wow,
I don't know if you know this about me, but Peter Youngblood and I, he's a costumer in Winnipeg. We had a vintage store in the Exchange District. I was down there for a good 5-6 years, and Peter joined me for the last 3 years of that.
what was the name of it?
Wildwood Rose Vintage.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I didn't get into vintage, and I wasn't cool until very late, like last week. So like I only child, very helicopter parent. So like all of those things I've slowly incorporated into my life. What is it, I guess, that because everybody that I talk to, there's a running theme. Either they get into a department and they stick like you did,
Mhm.
or they play with a bunch of other ones. Did you ever play in anything else between, or
No.
did you? So
No.
okay.
I had no interest in playing in between, which is interesting because when I met these people who asked me if I was interested, I was actually going to night school at U of M, working towards my CGA. Thought I'd be, an accountant. And so the accounting department knew I had a little bit of schooling, and they would always ask me, but no, I didn't want to be that person sitting at the desk listening to all the people going, "Where's my paycheck?"
I didn't get my 10% off my insurance. I need to talk to
Exactly.
HR.
Yeah. So no, I stayed with the costuming, and I started from the very bottom. I started, well, I don't want to call it the bottom. I worked in every facet of the department to learn all sorts of different things to bring me to where I am today. I started as a truck costumer. I worked as an assistant costumer. I worked as a breakdown artist. I've worked as a coordinator. After the truck gig for about 5 years, Winnipeg really started to grow and we needed more crew. And I moved to be a set supervisor. I think my first gig was the story about the Osmond family.
I know that family.
Yeah.
Kristen Sawatsky just did the show with us recently, and she did the stunts on that show.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And so that was my first forte into set costuming, and I did that for many, many years. Until I kind of realized that, people who work on the set all the time don't have the opportunity to go to dentist appointments and as I said, I had kids, right? And my kids were in football. I was going to parent teacher, all these things, and it was a struggle. So I chose to move into the shop, if you will, and learn more about buying and assistant costume designing, coordinating, and eventually costume designing.
So I have an idea because I've talked to Heather Neal, which I'm sure you know.
Yeah, Heather was one of my assistants for many years. Great person.
She said the same thing about you. Like the names just I love the community that Manitoba Film is. I kind of have an idea, but I'm always down to learn a new thing and not look like an idiot and open my mouth at the wrong time. So what are the levels of that? Like when you say truck to set to buying, like what's in the truck? What's on set? What's at buying?
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So tiers, if you will.
Yeah.
We'll start with the costume designer who comes up with the concepts, works collaboratively with the production team, producers, creative producers, showrunners, what have you, director, of course, and comes up with the vision, and then it comes down to the assistant designer who becomes that person's right hand person, and kind of manages the shop, if you will, and decides. Helps doing the buying, but there's also the coordinator. How many BG do we need for one day? How many people do we need to dress the BG? How many shoppers do we need? Is it a period costume show? Do we need people looking after all the rentals. Like there's so many different facets. Does this show have breakdown? Breakdown meaning aging and making things look older?
Yes.
Or, or do you have a specific look? Like think of The Handmaid's Tale with all those red gowns and all the blue gowns. All of that stuff is dyed, those colors. So do you need a dye artist? Are you creating a specific look? I mean, all of that is the things that twirl in the costume shop, if you will, to create the looks that are then sent to set. And on set, you have the set supervisor, the costume set supervisor. Sometimes if you have a name actor, a bigger actor, that person will have their own personal set supervisor that looks after only them. I've done that job a couple times as well. And then you have your truck costumer. And think about a giant closet built in a semi-trailer.
I want one.
Double.
I want
Yeah,
one.
yeah, it's fantastic. It's double racking systems. You have a washer and a dryer, if it's a good truck, of course. A workstation, an area that we congregate in the morning before we start shooting on set. And that's where the truck costumer will look after everybody's clothes, clean them, organize them, label them, make sure all the closets are good to go. And we have what's called a lineup, a daily lineup. And that's a specific rack that holds each actor that's playing that day, their costumes, their costume changes. Everything's tagged with notes on how this should play, how it should look. It's so funny. People say to me, "Oh my God, you're a costume designer. Can you make a Halloween costume for me?"
Oh my God.
And that's not what it is. But I understand, that people don't get it, and that's why you're asking me the question. Or the other thing that people will say to me, "Oh my God, you just must love shopping." Oh yeah, I just love shopping when I can't find something and they want that thing,
Yeah. And that thing is, 2 weeks away, halfway around the world, and you got to buy it. They're like, get it, find it, get it here.
Exactly. And then, then we have costumers or sometimes assistant costumer or costume assistants, we call them. And those are the people that fill in the holes where things are needed on set, depending on the needs and the details of what's happening per day on set.
How much of what you get, and that's actually, let me react to that first before I jump here. I like asking questions. That's my problem.
That's okay. I love answering them.
So, could you have anywhere from say 10 people spread out between all of those departments, all the way up to say 100, pending the size of the film?
It's interesting that you say that. When we first started 25 years ago, it was a 3-person department. We wore many, many hats. I'm seeing out here in Vancouver a lot of these movies of the week and things like that. Same thing, it's 4 people doing all of the work. So it really hasn't changed much. It's dependent upon the needs of the show. I usually work with, you have your base core of 4, 5, 6 people, and then it can go anywhere upwards 20. I was talking to somebody in Calgary who's working on a series out there. It's a period series, and they have their base crew plus 30 people on their show. So it all depends on the needs of the show.
And are those needs based on period piece, not period piece? Are they based on how do you marshal your force if you're, because me, I know I've well, I shouldn't say I know, but I have a better idea. But I want people to understand that to create a world where you fall into it for 2 hours and fall out of it, it's not just a costume designer, because everybody says the same thing, and I love it. It's it's a team, it's an effort, it's a huge group of people, and there's always somebody doing something. It's not just for the ones who watch the Oscars, you see the main staff or the main department on there, but these 30 other people you're talking about never get to get on stage. They never get an Oscar. So what changes the amount of people? Is it the eccentricity of the costume? Is it the the price? What are those factors?
Bottom line is the budget.
Bloody dollar.
It comes down to the budget. But no, to answer your question is, here's a really good example.
Right.
Don Cherry, Keep Your Head Up, Kid, the Don Cherry series, the CBC miniseries. I did that one, and I did the one that came after it. We started in 1944, 42, and we went all the way to 1990s, I believe, by the time we were done. We had 10 hockey teams, home and away uniforms. So we had to find period hockey skates. We had to have a lot of those hockey uniforms, the fabric knit, because they had knit uniforms back then. Then in the 70s, they came into that nylon mesh, then on and on and on. So we had to have people looking after all those teams, the hockey players, as if, they were like assistants to hockey teams, make sure that they have their skates, their tape, that everything's ready for the day. Then on the other side of it, we were shooting things in, the Pembina Hotel was our bar. And so we had all the period extras dressed in day clothes, if you will. Yep. 1950s, 1960s. So
I'm looking at a shot here of all of, like, it's an arena shot at a game.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably, I'd say, rough count, 40 to 50 people in this shot, and they are all in a unique costume from that era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think I had 12 to 15 people at any given time on that show. I wish I could have had more, but again, it all came down to budget and what I was allowed to have. I did another period show called Mad Ship, set in 1934. It was Dust Bowl, about a young man that built a ship in Saskatchewan. I'll let you watch the film. I won't tell you any more than that. It was also period, but I think I only had 5 people on staff. And so, there weren't as many characters. There weren't as many things needed.
So, like you said, when you get down to it, it's how much is this going to cost for 10 characters, 100 characters? So budget leads.
Absolutely. And, Jared Kiso was my lead in Don Cherry. He had 168 costume changes.
Oh my God.
In the first series, yeah. And I had 98 principal characters. And then I had the hockey teams too. But then you go to something like Mad Ship, and I believe I had 10 characters total and maybe 30 extras. So it's all dependent.
So we know our audience. We love our listeners. We know that not a lot of them play sports, I'm guessing, because none of us do. First time you ever had to work with jerseys, what was that like?
You mean working with the actual jerseys and the players, or having them made?
Let's go with both.
Okay. Well, there was a company in Culver City. They've changed names recently, so I'm sorry, I don't know the new name. And they had the knitting machines that actually, they set up the colors, they set up the stripes, they knit all the fabrics. They had the old-fashioned looping embroidery machines to do the proper logos. But they also had the newer things where they could do the new name bars that came in. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I think they came in 1978, 79. I was working a lot with the Bruins, and I had to make sure that the costumes were correct, because the Bruins started with that knit stuff, but then they went into the mesh. I think it was 78. They didn't have name bars. 79, they all started to wear name bars, and the numbers as well. Yeah. So it was we all joined the NHL stats group, and we had to pay for a membership so that we could learn all the stats on who played on what team, what their number was, what their costumes or their uniforms looked like. It was a process, but it was, and I think I even went, I did. I went to the NHL Museum in Toronto to look at some of the actual costume pieces.
That's great. Boston hockey fans will eat you alive if they saw that, and they were like, "How dare you? How dare you, Canada?"
Yeah. Well, that's just it. I was an assistant designer on a show called The Bear Named Winnie, or A Bear Named Winnie.
Yeah,
it was
right.
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh, and Michael Fassbender was the lead actor. And my grandfather, who was RCAF, World War II, phoned me, and he said, "You guys put the red tabs on the general's costume on upside down." I never heard the end of that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Kind of like a Starbucks coffee in the middle of a Game of Thrones scene.
Absolutely.
Right? Someone's always looking. And you only get like one shot, right? Like
Well, unless somebody else, like your director, could be really into the military or police uniforms or stuff, and they'll correct you right away. But if they don't know, you're doing the research on your own, and I like to be as real and correct as possible.
Yeah, your name's there, right? So
Mhm.
it's a matter of, and that I think like lighting, each department is their own facet, but costuming is where the world starts to take place. I think once you see what they're wearing, then you know where they are. And
It tells the story. A lot of times it helps to tell the story. Costuming is not about going to the mall and buying clothes. It is about creating a character that with costume that helps tell that character's story, but also helps the actor be comfortable enough to feel the part so that they don't have to think about their costume and they can do their job, they can perform.
okay, that's really interesting. Having done this for well over 20 years, what's it like watching an actor get into your costume and see that change occur, like where the costume becomes that like sixth man on the court, or that superpower that like their cape, right? Like I'm thinking,
Yeah.
when they put the cape on Henry Cavill, you were like, okay, we are here now, right? And that's what, like, when Marvel makes a costume, oh my God, fandom came.
It's a costume. Yeah.
It's a costume. So I'm just wondering what it's like for the costumer to finally see, you're making it, you're sketching it, you're sewing it, you're aging it, whatever you're doing to it, you're hoping that it is what it is, but then you're giving them that extra zhuzh, so to speak.
Well, a prime example for me recently, two instances. One I'm not going to give away too much. The rest you can see.
Yes.
One is Nobody, and it was the Russian character on that. If any of you have seen it,
It's so it's so cool.
I love that film. It's Fast and Furious. Well, same people as the Fast and Furious, right? But it's they have a model and they know how to do it. But I was doing this film in Winnipeg. I had moved here, but came back to Winnipeg, and there were not a lot of stitchers available, not a lot of tailors. There's the one tailor I'm going to give a shout out to is Tam the tailor on Ellis. He has done so much work for us and so much incredible work, but he was really busy. So it's okay, what do I do now? And as a costume designer, you get these emails from these companies reaching out, from Thailand or wherever. Hey, we do this, we do this, we do this. And these guys from Siam Costumes reached out to me, and they sent me their lookbooks. They sent me their website. We'd really like to work with you. And I took a risk, and I hired them to help me do the looks. So I had an illustrator help me, and I would talk about what I wanted. And these guys would go to the market in Thailand every day.
Wow.
And they would source fabrics for me of things that I was talking about. And then they would show me the fabrics. They had it all at their fingertips. They would send me either samples or they would show it over Zoom.
Of course.
Because, we just didn't have a lot of time. And then I would sit down in the boardroom with my creatives and say, this is what I want to do. What do you think? My director had it all built. Pardon me, I'm going to take a sip here. It's very smoky here in Vancouver.
I got all the juice down here to keep me nice.
And we had it built and had it shipped. I had somebody in Toronto do the actor's measurements because he was there working on something. So she did a really good job, specific. So when everything arrived, he stepped into it, and he didn't speak much English. And
just for reference sake, is this Alexei Serebrenov?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought so.
Yeah. Thank you for remembering his name.
Not a problem. I'm all over your page now, so you've got a fact checker.
Good. And he stepped into the costume and he started to stomp around the room. Like, I even had shoes done for him by this company. They from scratch built these gold and black snakeskin shoes that matched his costumes perfectly.
Oh.
And he would put his hands on his hip, and he had a translator with him. And he started going off, and I had no idea what he was saying. Is he happy? Is he pissed? What's going on?
Right.
And the translator said to me, he has never felt more in character than when he stepped into that suit.
Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, and you see it in the film. You absolutely see it in the film.
He's very flamboyant, very over the top. but I think that's what's so great about his character, because he is so well dressed and he presents himself as such a GQ man, but is absolutely crazy and a sociopath. So it's like this silver suit that you had made is just, I love it. Like I would never be able to wear it, but I love it.
Well, and the process with the director, he kept saying to me gold, and I kept saying, no, that's Elvis. And then he'd say white, and I'd say, no, that's John Travolta. So we met in the middle, right? It's a very fine line. You want to create your own thing, but every good designer steals a little bit from somebody else here and there.
And yeah, like it's the compliment to the point where it's theft, right? Like a little bit is always like, hey, I see you, but if I'm tracing this out and coloring it in the exact same way, then that's where I think what I watch a lot of Food Network. So when I see somebody just open up a box and cook it, I'm like, you didn't cook, you just want something up, right? So I can kind of get what you're saying. I love, like, the whole show is a big John Wick fan, and Elia's mind is he is coming across the thing, like he unlocked a aging action hero genre that has miles on it. Like you can do any character, you can do man, you can do woman, you can go back and take, like it's so much fun. So when we all heard about Nobody, we actually got to talk to Paisley on the show.
Wonderful.
And
yeah, wonderful.
Freaking darling. And so much fun. And like we sat and talked with her for a minute, and it was the scene where she's on Daddy's chest, and we said to her, I was like, I don't think you understand, Paisley. Every time you're in the room, Hutch becomes a different person. Like you're the only thing that Hutch is hanging on to from his new life. And it was just really, I was like,
her facial expressions, that scene where she comes crawling over the couch and lies on him is one of my favorite in the film. Just those little dimples and Hutch softens and becomes dad at that point. Yeah. What a great film. What a great film to work on.
What's an action film like? Because all we're seeing is damage, destruction. So now I'm thinking, oh, there's 4 costumes completely made from scratch again. Like how, like, you say a period piece is very trying because you're sourcing out of date. You're trying to find things that niche markets in Thailand and Culver City are the only places in the world maybe that make them still. So what's an action film like where it's just total destruction for you and like you're just doing the same thing over and over again, essentially?
Well, it's interesting. I had worked with Keanu Reeves on a film called Siberia.
Yes.
And that I had met Braden Aftergood, who was one of the executive producers on that film. And that was kind of, I had done a little bit of action, but not a lot. That was my first real dip into it. And the director had a friend in New York that had a tailoring company, and so he really wanted me to use him. So I had, I think 6 of Keanu's cashmere long coats built.
Oh, wow.
By this, actually everything was built by this guy, down to the jeans that Keanu wore in that film. And you have to make sure that you have the clean one. There's the stages, right? You always keep one clean, because you never know if you're going to have to go back and reshoot something before the action starts. And then you have the different stages of what happens. Then you have the final aftermath, if you will. So it all depends on how much action there is and how much blood there is. Are you doing VFX blood and gunshots, or are you doing practical with squibs and things like that? So for Siberia with Keanu, we did a lot of squibs. He loved old school. He wanted to do it old school, the way he had learned how to do it a gazillion years ago. Whereas with Nobody, we had a mix of both.
Okay.
So you'll see it. There's a lot of VFX, but there's a lot of practical action as well. I think for Bob Odenkirk, if I can talk about Hutch a little bit, is that okay?
Yeah, please. Your
Hutch's character
at my disposal, so you can go.
Okay. Hutch's character had, I think, 4 basic looks to him. We started off with, the boring guy. For
Yep.
those of you that have seen the film, the guy that's in a boring life, he's going to the boring job every day, the same coffee cup, the same coat, the same whatever. So, the production designer and I, Roger Fires, wonderful man, and we sat down and we talked about the level of clothes for this character. And he looked at me and he said, wouldn't it be great if we could design something so cool that a Funko Pop made a doll out of it?
That's the game now.
That's the game now. And somebody has made an action figure. And
Yes.
so I wish, yes. And
Yes. I will
if
buy
you
it.
can do some fact checking on Instagram there, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he needs a wonderful plug. I sat down with him and talked about all the costumes. He reached out to me and I got permission to talk to him. And he copied fabrics, he copied style, anything, whatever. So we decided that Hutch would be wearing, back to the beginning here, a polo shirt and some khakis and, just a boring jacket when we first saw him. And Roger said, but it needs to be something interesting. And I was something catchy. And I was standing in the hallway with Ilya, our director, and Kelly McCormick, our creative executive producer. And she was wearing this coat that had gradient blue stripes across the chest of it. And I said, that's it. That's it right there. Sat down with the illustrator, did some looks on this polo shirt, and they loved it. And they went with it.
This is the
Go
brown
ahead.
jacket and the striped shirt underneath with the khaki.
The striped polo, yeah. The brown jacket came into play when he goes to his dad, played by Christopher Lloyd, his place, and he reaches into his closet and pulls out something that was his dad's from the past.
Yep.
I was trying to find something that was kind of 70s inspired, thinking Vietnam maybe, not sure exactly what the era was. And I reached out to Belstaff. They do a lot of work with Tom Cruise and James Bond and things like that. I thought they've got to have something. And I had a friend hook me up with, one of the head people there, and they came up with this jacket and said, what do you think of this? And I said, it's beautiful.
It is.
So I had 6 of those, I believe, 6 or 8, I can't remember. Yeah. I chose it because it looked period. It was suede, so it would break down easily. And also, when you're squibbing something, you need to be able to have the fabric pop, if you will. Not that he got squibbed in that, he was in that bus accident. So there was a lot of scrapes and cuts and blood, and it had to read, it had to show. Beautiful, beautiful coat. And then I went in the route of Vans, like skater gear for pants, because Bob is a very slim kind of guy.
Yes.
He had worked, he'd worked for 2 years to come up with this body, if you will. He did most of his own stunts whenever he possibly could. And he was totally into this. And I showed him, they were Volcom pants.
Nice.
And
shout out to Vulcan for making some stretchy skater.
Stretchy skater pants. And he's like, well, why'd you pick these? And I said, put them on. And he was kicking and bending in the fitting, and he goes, oh my gosh, they look like your typical khakis that I could wear to work, but I can do all the practical action in them. And so that's what we went with. And I think Blundstone came out with a new boot that had a lace up, so it was comfortable. Yeah, so that was that. And I think the next jacket was a Filson, same thing. It was all about, it was the navy blue one.
Yep.
It was all of
sketches here right now for reference.
Yeah, you see it in the very beginning when she asks, "Who the fuck are you?" Oh, yeah. Sorry, bleep.
No,
who are you?
Fuck. It's all fine.
Okay.
We're explicit. Don't feel bad.
And that was a Filson jacket. So natural fibers, easy to break down, easy to squib, and it looked fantastic on him. And it went with our color palette too. So these are all the things that we had to think about. Big plug out there to Vittorio Rossi and Frank and the boys over there in Winnipeg. I think they're an academy now, and they helped me hook me up with a lot of these people to bring in some of these higher end pieces.
It looked great. We've all seen it. It's such a fun, it was such a fun thing 2021 needed for, just to kind of break out of all of the nonsense. And then you're like, okay, hang on. hang on here.
Yeah.
Telling me the asshole lawyer is going to be the new John Wick? Like, I was only skeptical because that's all I've seen of him since the
Right.
show, right? Like his early sketch comedy days with David Cross. So like, I was a little like, okay, all right, let's see where this goes. But then you hear that Elia's doing it, and then I'm like, all right, this is going to be something crazy. And I just believed everything that he did. I was like, there is a dark person underneath all of this.
Well, and back to the costuming process, if I might, I think this is one of the most fantastic shows for if I was ever to sit down and write a book about my experience. I'll never remember it all, but where these guys told me stories, and Bob sat down with me and we talked about the past, and we talked about how he got to where he is today and Saul and things like that. And I don't know if you guys know, but he was one of the writers on SNL.
Yes,
and
humorous.
He wrote the skit In a Van Down by the River.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that. So we had some really interesting chats about writing those kinds of things. And then you have someone like Christopher Lloyd came in. He started talking without me even having to ask questions. But I usually don't, right? I usually don't. But we spent so much time together that some of these guys just started talking about their life as actors. So I got to hear all about Jim, Jim from Taxi.
Yes.
And his process. Yeah, he didn't talk much about Doc Brown, but he talked a lot about Jim. So I wish I'd hit the record button.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, you have RZA walk in the room. Wu-Tang Clan.
Right. Like that's a buffet of old, young, and okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. RZA was a southern man, from the southern states, and it was the accent. And yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, whatever I can do for you, ma'am. Absolutely, ma'am. And oh, what a sweetheart. I would work with him again in a hot second. But it was cast of characters.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great casting. Whoever sat down and figured out who should play who was genius. But with the costuming, working with Bob and RZA, you and Elia, I'm sure, are communicating back and forth a lot. But do these guys ever get involved and go like, what if sometimes we do collab at all, or
all the time?
All the time.
All the time.
So there is a working relationship between actor, director, and costumer.
Absolutely. And I think in my early days as an assistant designer, I worked with quite a few costume designers. Nobody in Winnipeg per se, but there was a lot of people that would come into town, and I learned what not to do, if you will.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And one of the big things not to do is to not listen to your actor. I listen to them all the time. If they want something that makes them feel comfortable, something that's going to allow them to not think about the wardrobe. Keanu and I sat down, a day and a half together at a table in a hotel somewhere. And we went through every scene, every costume change, every thought. We talked about it all. He's a brilliant man. So that when it came to working on set, good morning, Keanu, how are you? There was no issues.
Yes.
There was no issues. He was happy with everything, and he could just go to work. That's very, very important. So
that's a lot of time to be on camera as opposed to not being on camera. Exactly.
And I've seen instances where people are wearing colors that they really, really don't feel comfortable in, or styles or fits that they just, makes them think about their bodies instead of thinking about acting. And I really try and avoid. I work with all three of them. I'm currently working on a series where I have a showrunner, a director, an actor that have a lot to say, and myself, who also is, as you can tell, likes to talk. I have a lot to say too. But we've been sitting down through these Zoom, Google Meet meetings, and I've been presenting ideas, and we all talk them out. So that in the end, everybody's pleased with the work. Illy and I spent a lot of time on Nobody, and Sean Penn and we spent a lot of time, but that's a whole other story that I'll wait for you to get into.
Oh no, I'm perfectly fine talking about Sean Penn and Flag Day, because I'm so Patty, I'm so excited to see that movie. It's not even. I thought it was going to be Matchstick Men-ish, because when I heard about the story, I was like, okay, con man, long con, gentlemen. Like I'm a huge fan of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, so I was like, this is going to be a dramatic version of that and how a guy lives his life through the long con. Then I saw the trailer, and I'm just like, where is this? Like that looks like it's going to be around in January for award season.
No jinxing allowed.
All right, we got that. It won't even exist in the real world. My bad. What time is it? Okay, 5 minutes. We'll chop that out. My bad.
You don't have to chop it out, but that's what I've been saying to everybody.
Is that what people have been saying to you? Because
they have.
like
Not necessarily for costumes, but the overall feel of it. Just from the trailer itself, as we have discussed in the past, Michael, Flag Day was in competition at the Cannes Film Festival this year.
yes.
74th edition of the Cannes Film Festival. They finally opened. Sean invited me to go with him, which, how do you say no to that?
No.
You don't. It was one of the most exciting experiences of my life, was to be there while they presented his film to the world, and to have people like Oliver Stone. Spike Lee was the head of the jury, sitting like three chairs away from you, watching your work. My husband said, keep that ego down, but when my name,
let it fly.
when my name came up on the end with a title card, I got a big cheer and clap from the audience, and I almost cried.
That's amazing. Let's start with working with, because this is a father-daughter production, right? This is him working with his daughter. So was she integral to the part of helping you create her costume and his costume? Because what era is it? Is it 80s? Late
So we
80s?
start in 1970 and we'll go to 1992.
Okay.
And I was on vacation in LA, January of 2019, and I got a call saying, would you like to go to Sean Penn's house in Malibu? And I said, sure. And I spent the night, reading the script, pulling together some pictures that, when I read a script, there's things that instantly come to my mind, ideas, other films that I've seen, what have you. And I put together a quick little lookbook. And I drove to Malibu and sat on Sean's couch with him and presented it, pitched it, if you will. And he looked at me and he looked at it, and he was very quiet. And I thought, oh God. He turned to me again and he said, would you like to be my costume designer? And that's how it started. Wow. So I came home from that vacation, and I think I spent about a month preparing what I call a lookbook. Some people call them mood boards, concept books, putting together all my thoughts. I start from the beginning of the script to the end of the script, and I put in references to how I see things, how I see the costumes, even down to how I see hairstyles, things like that match with it. And then when Sean got to Winnipeg, I presented that to him. He had very little to say other than just do it. So Sean was directing, acting, and his daughter was starring in it, daughter Dylan Penn, and his son Hopper Penn was also starring in it.
Awesome.
We had Catherine Winnick, for those Viking fans out there, plays his wife.
Yeah, she's awesome in that show.
She's wonderful. We had Danny Motor as our cinematographer, and we shot on Super 16. We shot on real film.
Really?
We did.
Oh, wow.
So that was a process in itself. So it gives the films the whole tone to the film, a grainy feel, a real feel. And I was speaking with John Killick, one of our executive producers, who had done Dead Man Walking with Sean. And he said to me, I'm watching the monitor and it looks like everybody's in the 70s. And it's not fake, it's not forced, it's not what have you. So if you want to know my process, I'm about to dive into it.
I would love. My next question was, all right, so how do you start to finish something like this for a film? Like what's your?
Okay, so for this one, I said to everybody, It's set in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I want to go there because Minneapolis, St. Paul has one of the biggest vintage markets in all of the northern part of the States. But I wanted to stay true to what people wore there as well. We all know it today as penguin, you know, the little penguin on your shirt, but it was called Munsingwear. And the factory had closed, I don't know how long ago, but a lot of these vendors, these vintage pickers, people with storefronts, people with, oh my gosh, hidden gems, had stuff still in the packages from some of these. It was a garment district. And so I said to the producers, I'm going there. And I took my assistant Sean Penn with me, and we flew to Minneapolis. And our intent was to go to just the vintage market to pull stuff from there. But in the meantime, we'd made a whole bunch of connections on Instagram. So by the time we got to someone's house, oh, this woman has all these kids' clothes from the period that are, you know, from the factory, still in the packages. Next thing, we were in some DJ's basement over in St. Paul, who had all this collection of beautiful motorcycle jackets and beautiful military wear, things like that, that were pretty cool for the period, right, that people would wear. Next, the most amazing thing, I was sent to some shop, all of this through Instagram. And it was a storefront that had regular vintage clothing from, you know, you go from the 40s up to the 80s, what have you. And he said, oh, I have a private collection. Let me take you in the back. And he opened up this secret door, and it's where the boss, Bruce Springsteen, gets all of his stuff. And all these leather jackets on the wall, the motorcycles, everything was in there. And we took a big video of it. We hit the jackpot.
No kidding.
So I phoned the producers and said, yeah, I'm staying for a week. And I did.
See you soon.
Yeah, Shawl and I would spend our evenings at the hotel room boxing things up and doing commercial invoices and having it all shipped back to Winnipeg. We cleaned out the vintage stores in Winnipeg, my own included, for those periods. And then we went to Toronto because they have the biggest, best costume rental houses in the country. And I specifically pulled looks that I wanted from my principal characters, for my main cast, and brought it all back to Winnipeg. We had a shop, I don't know, 100 racks full of things. We were in a warehouse space over on Sony Road there, fitting rooms. And
I was there once for the day job and saw just rows upon rows upon rows of stuff, and was like, this is so cool. Like it when you got everything, was it ready to go too, or did you have to age it all, or
there's a whole other process to that. The stuff that comes from the rental houses, you don't touch it, but it's true to the period. It's been worn before. I cannot age any of those kinds of things. So I have to be very specific in what I pick. And a lot of times the rental houses will have things that are already aged. So we had a woman, Leah Stabelko, come on board, and we had a whole breakdown system set up. She had what we would call the juice. And it was a chemical process that she juiced everything with and went through the washer. And it takes the top layer off of things and ages it to give it a well-looked, loved. So not right out of the box, not right out of the package.
My favorite shirt-looking look to it.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have to organize it all to period, because we had all sorts of different periods. We have to size it all. You know, these are jeans from the 70s, and they start at waist size 26 and they go up to waist size 32. So there's a lot of hands-on to organize it. And then it's almost like setting up a giant store, if you will. And then my fittings would start to get scheduled, and I would go back there and I would pull everything together, what I had gathered, and this will work for this character, this will work for this character. You know, that was the process. And then we get into the fittings and try it all on. I actually prefer doing period costuming than contemporary costuming because I have less complaints from the talent, from the actors, because it's what it was.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, totally. You can't be like, no, I'd like to look like this. It's like, you look like a 17th century person. Deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, there's still all of us have body issues, and all of us want to portray our best selves. So we work with that, tailoring things and making sure that the fit's perfect. But and that's the process. Take another sip here.
Do you?
If Sean ever hears this, he may kill me, but that's okay. When it came down to Sean, he was so busy. He was so busy because I think he had a little hand in some of the script rewrites. His finger was in every pie. So I got him to try on one dress shirt, one pair of 70s jeans, one suit, one pair of shoes, one t-shirt. And he had 80 different costume changes. So from those base pieces, I had to measure them up and make sure that everything would fit him. And I would be on set every day with a rolling rack for, my labels. I think here's 3 options for this scene. Here's 3 options for this scene. He would look at it and he'd go, okay, that. And he would take it into his dressing room, put it on, and then he would go act and direct. So that was, I've never done that before. It was incredible, but it worked.
Working with an actor director where your principal actor is wearing your amazingly picked costume, now directing in it, that must be
with no fitting.
With no fitting. That's like okay, so I've talked to cinematographers before. Brad Crawford is specifically who I'm speaking of, and he was telling me that there are certain guys out there who can just eyeball distance when it comes to focus. Like they can be like, I know I need this lens. Can you look at somebody? Because it seems like you can. Like what you're saying translates to, okay, you've given me a cutout to work with. I'm going to take it and run. Because it seems like you could look at me and be like, okay, you're a 42 whatever or a 38 waist. Like, is that some freaky talent that's kind of come from doing costuming for so long?
A lot of us that have been doing it for a long time will have, background performer come in the room and we'll go, oh yeah, 42, 32. What size are those feet? Absolutely. We do it all the time. All the time.
That's fun. Do you do it? I can imagine, like, because me and Shauna, my wife, will go to a park and we'll make up stories for the people we see. Do you make up costumes for people you see walking down the street?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course you do. Yes.
It's one of my favorite things to do. When my husband and I were in town a couple of weeks ago, one of our favorite things to do was to sit on the boardwalk at nighttime, just sip a drink and watch the people go by and talk about what they were wearing or where did they get that from, and look at how that's put together. And I'm training him to appreciate costuming.
What did he do in stage? You said you met him from the stage union.
Oh, that's the first husband.
Sorry.
He's long gone. Yeah, it's okay. The second, this one is corporate. And yeah. So he's not in film, and it works beautifully.
I just hear all the John Krasinski, Emily Blunt drama on A Quiet Place. I'm like, yeah. How do you tell your wife to shut up all day long and go home and have a happy life? Like
you don't.
No, don't. Oh man.
Well, there are the exceptions.
Yeah,
there are the exceptions that can pull it off.
And I guess we're like the singer-songwriter relationship. Some of my favorite bands that were couples are no longer, because eventually it just just too close to each other. There's no break.
Well, look at Fleetwood Mac's best album. It was all about their breakups.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, you are right.
Yep.
Fair enough. When you talk about this jacket you put on Hutch, or some like, do you ever get married to costumes and have a hard time aging them, breaking them? Like, do you have anxiety about that sometimes, where you're like,
yeah,
a different version of this, and I'm gonna take this home and do whatever I want with it?
That's so funny that you say that, because Hutch's jacket is a prime example. Because it was a beautiful, beautiful jacket. Like I said, Belstaff, that thing was $3,000.
Wow.
And so I just told you guys what those things cost.
Yeah, and you told me how much you got too.
Yeah, and I had Grant McDonald's breaking down for me on that show, and he actually said to me, I don't know if I can do this. I said, you have to, buddy, you have to. But yeah, all the time. But it's all part of the art. And in the end, those pieces don't belong to me. They're part of the story, and I have to let go.
I don't want any names. We're not about naming anybody here, but there's some things go missing sometimes, Patty.
Well, you guys all know about the Ryan Reynolds story, I'm sure, don't you? And that was not my show. I didn't work on it, but it was Deadpool. It was
Yeah.
in the news,
Yeah.
so I can talk about that one. And
Yeah.
I do know
everybody in who
some.
doesn't know. Everyone, I think most of Canada knows what Ryan Reynolds is doing right now at home.
Yeah.
So because we love him so much. But yeah, tell people what they don't know.
Yeah, well, when he was doing, was it Deadpool 2, I believe? I think it was the second one. And, you know, they had created this beautiful costume for him and the Deadpool costume. And at the end, the very last day of shooting, he just said, "See ya, and you're not getting your costume back." And he walked right off the set. I have since worked with a couple costumers that were on set that day, and, you know, producers were losing their minds. And but you know, I think Ryan was probably a producer on that too, and yeah, away it went.
He got to pay for it if he put money in it. So.
So yes, to answer your question, it does happen. Has it happened on my shows, my projects? 100%.
That's great. No, but you know what? Like Depp did that with Sparrow, and maybe he probably had a spare one made, not just walked off set.
Oh, there was many of those. There was many.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, you know, you've got something spare, but I feel that costume wears well. Like it looks like when I saw the people try to do the Halloween version, I was like, get the fuck out of here. Like that's, I'm sorry, you look like you're in a red leotard. Like he looks like he's ready to get shot and fall to pieces. So big difference.
That's right. Yeah.
But I think though he was trying for 10 years to make that. So I feel that's Ryan Reynolds' charm, Ryan Reynolds' humor, because like we all know he'll give it back. He's Canadian. He's not going to keep it. But like, like, listen, if I'm going to be Deadpool, I'm going to Daniel Day-Lewis this and wear it all the time. I'm going to be Method Deadpool.
Absolutely. You know, and if you look at the Flag Day trailer, sure, there's a couple pieces in that stand out, and I know where they are.
I'm so happy that, like, I love that story about how you get a call on a vacation and you go to his house, and like those are I'm at the age where I love how the sausage is made. I love what you guys do. I want to know more about it. The mystery does not get demystified for me when I know how a stunt is done. I'm still blown away because it doesn't look like what you're telling me you're doing. Like what you're saying you're doing never projects on screen, which is, I think, the measure of your talent, because everything you've explained to me doesn't look like what I saw. What I saw is like 1,000 times better version of it. So it's, I dig that. What do you want a costume that you haven't costumed yet? What's your dream costume? If someone could show up and give you all the budget, what show would you want to just jump on right now, let's say, and which one would you want to do?
I want to do period. I want to do period projects. I'm drawn to history. I should have been a history major. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. I spent a season teaching the history of costume at MC College. That didn't go well because I couldn't get them to like what I liked. You know, the students, they didn't see it how I did. So, you know, some of my favorite things to watch are period costuming. One of our producers on Flag Day is Bill Horberg, who just won the Golden Globe for The Queen's Gambit. You know, he did The Talented Mr. Ripley, The Kite Runner. I want to work with Bill again. I want to work with, get a project that's period. The Queen's Gambit costuming just blows my mind. For those of you that haven't seen it, the costume designer takes the chessboard into consideration in every single costume that our lead is wearing. It's absolutely incredible. I would like to work on a period project with producers that are very creative and have these ideas that we can tell a story through the costuming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes, because that's, I totally get that, because the story, like, you can really go costume heavy, right? You can Shakespeare in Love, for example, right? Or the British show that everybody loves right now, that's going through the ages of the Queen, right?
Well, the Crown is fantastic. I love that project. Downton Abbey, all of those things that tell a story through the history of costume. I would like to do that, and I have done that on every single period project I've worked on, whether it's set in the 70s, 80s, what have you. I'm telling a story through costume, through the history, based on the history of costume,
Is
the
there
history of clothing.
is there anybody out there that you pull from, that you admire, that you followed over the years? Like you mentioned earlier, you kind of take from everybody. Like who do you fangirl over?
Oh my God, Alexander McQueen is, I love him. But Alexander is unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but his designs are out of the norm. They come from nature. He takes a little bit of historical period costuming and puts them into where he did. And Sarah Burton, who's now taking over the house, has done that. But if I was to go back, and the people that I always pull from is Yves Saint Laurent. Dior is huge, absolutely huge. I just watched the series on Netflix, Halston.
Yes. What did you think?
I loved it. I loved it.
He's amazing. I watched a couple episodes so far, and I haven't come back to it, but he's amazing in it. Most beautiful man ever.
Ewan McGregor in that, absolutely fantastic. But those are the designers that are my favorites. But when it comes to eras, that's a whole different story.
Sure.
It's about what was going on in the world during those periods. You had that dramatic shift from Edwardian to Victorian into the 20s flappers. Then you had the Depression, which cut everything out. The supplies were limited, so styles and fashions changed because of the economics of the world and what was going on. Then you get into the 40s where it was more tailored. And then 1947, Dior created the new look, which was the very nipped in waist, the tailored bodices and the giant skirts, on and on and on.
And those. like, how would women carry a carpet around all day long on you? Like, it's a lot of heavy clothing.
Exactly. So I can't really specify, as you're asking me that question, Vivienne Westwood. Oh my God, she started the punk influence, and love her. I love them all. How does that say? I love them all. And I pull from all of them.
That says that you've got a palette. That says that you don't limit yourself. That says you're not going to put yourself into a lane and just do that. And I would imagine in the world you work in, you can't do that. You're going to go. You're going to go from Chucky. Don Mancini, our guy Jimmy Skinner, loves Chucky, and
I adore him.
Doug Morrow, super good friend of the show.
Talked to him yesterday. Yep.
Lovely individual. Took Jimmy to his studio and did a scar on him. We've got pictures on our Instagram for it. But what's a horror like? We've done the period, we've done the cool new hip action. Like, what's a horror movie like?
Well, it's funny you say horror, because there's horror and then there's Chucky. So what do you want to talk about?
Chucky.
Okay. Chucky is something that Don Mancini created.
It's his baby.
His sister got a Cabbage Patch doll for Christmas one year, and he was going to film school, I think at UCLA. Forgive me, Don, if I got that wrong. And he had created this script, this character, and David Kirshner, who was, I guess, one of the critics that came in to check out everybody's work, and he just loved the idea, and there it was born. And the two of them have worked together ever since Don was 23 on this project. And working with Chucky, well, he was already created, right? So I had to work around him, and I had to make sure that the idea of Chucky never changed, but I had to create the characters that added to whatever story Don had come up with this year.
And they're all different. So I imagine you've done Curse and you've done Cult.
I have, and I had to make a big decision this past year, because they asked me to do the series that they just finished shooting in Toronto, and that was a really, really hard decision to make. But I was offered a job by Spielberg, and I decided to do that instead. But I've stayed.
One does, please, yeah, that's the career move.
Sorry, Dawn. I've done 2 Chuckies, and I am happy to do more if the case may be. But yeah, I was very sad to see some of the stuff coming up on Instagram and social media, things like that. That because those guys are big fans of posting Jennifer Tilly and Dawn all the time, and I was like, oh, I'm not there. But
Oh,
I still talked with them, and
when you make a decision like that, like obviously, like and no, like if Spielberg calls you, you answer the phone, right? Like
yeah.
so but how do you make decisions and stuff? Like is it it's not always about, like, that I've heard the saying, one for art, one for commerce, one for art, one for commerce, right? Like it can't
Absolutely.
about art, it can't all be about commerce, because then you don't have enough money to make art, and you don't have enough art and commerce. So
Yeah, and I've kind of avoided your question about horror. We can get back to that in a minute. But for me, I moved. I had to make a decision. I'd lived in Winnipeg all my life. I was born there in 1967. There, I just told you how old I am. And
87? Sorry, what was that? 87?
Yeah, 87. Winnipeg, while it was my stomping grounds, I learned so much from some wonderful people and did some amazing projects there. I wasn't getting choice. It was what was coming to Winnipeg. And there was, I think they can accommodate 3, maybe 4 crews there now. I'm not even sure if it's that much.
Right. 3 is, as an outsider, I would say 3 is comfortable. 4 might be pushing it.
Yeah. So I had to make, I want to retire one day, and I want to retire with some wonderful things on my resume, some more wonderful things on my resume, and more opportunity to make more money to retire too as well, right? It's commerce and it is art. And currently in Vancouver, I think they've got over 40 projects on the go right now. And when I first got here, I had been away working on other things, bought a house, and didn't get here for a year. And then I landed, and COVID hit a month later. So I was stuck at home for 8 months. Not stuck at home, I enjoyed my time not working and spending time with my husband and things like that. But it gave me a lot of time to reflect on what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was still selling vintage online full time, and I've really cut back on that. And it's more about enjoying life and being able to pick some projects and having more opportunities come along. In Winnipeg, there rarely does a series come, and if the series does come, there's one person that usually does them, and then I never got the opportunity to work on some of those things.
Bigger market, bigger opportunities. It's mad.
So I've been here working solid now. I started back at work in September of last year, and I'm on my 4th project.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. The gig community always scared me too, right? I like my continuity, I like my rigid form. So if something like a global pandemic, like that obliterated the ability for a minute, I think you guys were the most agile industry. You were like, all right, how do we just figure this out? Like but it's what you do every day, right? Like you come in, you're constantly problem solving, you're constantly creating. So it's like, let's just create another way around this. We can still do this. And I mean, I'm not an economics person by any state of the imagination, but like a lot of people were like, I don't want to. And
that's exactly what we're facing here in Vancouver right now, is people are, thank you, Mr. Trudeau, for extending CERB or CRB, I guess it is now, until the end of October.
Yeah.
And we're having a hard time crewing because people don't want to come out and work.
Yeah.
The Delta variant is increasing the numbers again. They'd rather stay at home. Rightfully so. You're entitled to your own life. This is a very deadly thing that's going on here, but it is making it very, very difficult to do my job. And I've had a lot of, over the years, just put MacGyver at the end of my name. We have to fix it and solve it and make it work.
And I mean, it'll come back to the way it was. That'll go away, because eventually it's a thing. It'll go away. Things come and go. We've seen.
Well, in the last 4 shows, my budget's been cut, and I'm sure everybody else is finding that theirs have been cut as well. because we have to pay for COVID. We have to pay to be safe.
Yes.
So
and that's what I know what you're saying. Like I know the industry here because I had to get a copy of the new manual of what they were doing on set. So I was aware, and it's expensive to stay safe.
very expensive. Yeah, it is. But I'm glad that they're stepping up to the plate and that everybody's working together. And
Yeah, you're not some mom and pop shop who's like, "Can I get a plexiglass shield?" And they're like, "What's plexiglass?" So
exactly.
it could be in that area, and that would really suck. What do you love about? Because I mean, you're from here, but you're out there, and I want to know BC film. We've got friends out there. We love to talk to more people in your industry. In that, like, we love Canadian film. We love the Canadian film industry. We love Hollywood North, right? Like that's a.
Yep.
I don't care about. I do care. If someone from LA called me, I'd say yes. But you guys are here. You're in my backyard. Your voice, your school, your talent, your yard, right? So, what do you what did you get when you went out there? What are some of the things that you can shout out to the BC film industry?
Oh, the possibilities, the opportunities are far vast than what I was used to. The crew base, huge, absolutely huge. There's so many talented people here. Choice, the ability to have choice to work on projects or not work on projects just because, oh my gosh, something might never come again. I have to take this.
Yeah.
I
imagine that's a nice thing to have is
it is. I live in Vancouver Island, on Vancouver Island, in a little commuter village called Mill Bay, and we're on the ocean, and we have a fishing boat. Never thought, prairie girl from Manitoba, that I would be out fishing on my weekends, but because I know that there is so much more opportunity here, I can take more time off, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It's not a risk. You're not jumping to their needs. You're going after your own needs when you need them. That makes
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm only finding that my resume is growing and more people are getting to know who I am here. And having things happen like Flag Day go to Cannes and nobody being so well receptive right out of the gate. I'm getting a lot more calls and a lot more opportunities. Resources here. I wish I could say there's more. There's better shopping for sure. There's better shopping, but again, COVID has really limited that as well. The shelves are empty. It's a struggle to find things. We're doing an awful lot of online shopping, so I can't really speak to that part of it because COVID has really changed how everybody across the country, I'm sure across the continent, is doing things.
Yeah, no, I'm in a little plexiglass cubicle. I'm behind I'm behind a corporation that has the resources to be able to do that and didn't take a single day off work. I can't. Yeah. I am a spoiled rotten child to begin with, but I had one incredibly easy COVID, and I was like, come on, just let me find a reason to stay off of work for 2 weeks for something. Everybody else is like, if you're not sick, you were shut down or what? Like, I mean, that's really stupid to say, and I don't mean it in its entirety.
I get it.
Like, my wife was out of work for like whatever, and we bought a house, and it was nuts. I was like, we bought a house in a pandemic right before you stopped working. Like, that is that's craps to me, right?
It's absolutely scary, and we did the same thing. We had bought the house the year before in Vancouver, and I don't know if any of you have seen or heard.
I knew the market. Yeah,
the market, like on the island and here in Vancouver, the cost of building materials has gone up 300%.
We're here too. What is diamonds out here in Manitoba?
Pardon me?
I said, wood is like diamonds.
Well, that's just it. And so that affects the film industry as well. It affects how much you have to build sets, how much you have. I'm really, really grateful for the studio spaces that are already set up here. Sure, I'm still going into empty spaces and having to start from scratch to build a costume shop, but it seems that there's more availability to do my job properly in things that are pre-established. So I like that about Vancouver as well.
That's awesome.
And they're talking about building the Malahat First Nation is on the island, and they are putting out proposals to build the Malahat Film Studio, which is literally right next door to where I live. I don't know if it'll ever be built in my lifetime, not my lifetime so much as my career lifetime, but I hope it is, because the proposals that they've sent me, because I am a member of the South Island Film Commission, it's going to bring so much more to the island, so much more opportunity, and maybe I might get to stay home once in a while. But yeah,
well, and an Indigenous-run film studio is pretty fucking awesome in this day and age.
yeah,
So like,
absolutely.
you know, that's the best of everything. I like when there's no losers, only winners. That's
Well, yeah, and they're building a school as well to train people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's one thing. If I have to compare Manitoba and Vancouver, Manitoba knows what they're doing. They have Manitoba film training,
Yes.
and we have
Yeah.
opportunities to train people properly. I'm finding here in Vancouver, there is no film training. It's just, okay, we need these people, bring them on. And it's like before film training in Manitoba, we learned on the job, but you know, it's something that has to be worked on.
I totally agree. We had the chance to have them on, and it's just this weird thing in the world where it's like, okay, if you want to get into this industry, you have to grovel, you have to find an angle, and it's can sometimes be snaky. Here it's like,
it's who you know.
It's who you know. Yeah, exactly. And here it's like, would you like to be in film? Come see us. Let's find out where we can put you. And it's like, you want me to do better in an industry that I have a dream to work in? Okay, sign me up. It's
brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
I wish that they could somehow launch that to federally, like really set up like training at film training, drop the Manitoba, it'd be film training Saskatchewan, film training BC, film training Alberta, right? Where they can, and they can write a letter to whoever is going to run this country next year, to pay attention to the arts area and do that, because it's an industry. They show up, thousands of you show up to a place, hotels, vendors, everybody wins when a film crew comes through, because it creates more jobs. It puts money back into the economy, lots of money back into the economy if you're Marvel, right? Like,
well, yeah,
$200-300 million to make a movie. Atlanta, I mean, screw their governor, but
their tax credits are incredible,
right? Yeah, so you've got, and that's the thing too, is that a place that can give you a tax credit. Before I let you go, though, there's two things that I really want to talk. I want to get a little bit more on Don and Chucky. Before we do that, actually, no, let's do that first. What's the doll like? I asked Doug that question. I want to know, like, that doll is so ingrained in cinematic culture that so I'm going to ask as many people until I can ask Dawn, because that's the only way I'm getting there.
Yeah, well, you're getting one step closer when you talk to me and Dougie about getting closer to Dawn. We can always try and make that happen for you. That doll is creepy. He's super creepy, and I have pictures of myself sitting with him. And the thing about him, Tony Gardner is the man behind the magic. He created the actual physical doll and the animatronics that go with the doll, and it takes, I think, 4 or 5 guys to make him move. So when you have Chucky's the star of the show, so I always found Chucky projects a little bit of a break costume wise, and I didn't have to work such horrendous long hours, because Chucky was on set, and it's going to take an hour and a half to get that foot to move where you want it to move properly, or to get the facial expression right. And animatronics have come so far that he's getting even more intense. And Tony and the gang, they do such a good job. They had their own locked up room. I wish you could see it. I don't know how to describe it. There's wires here and wires there, and there's people it's a puppeteering thing, but it's pretty fantastic. But to sit alone with the actual doll in a room, I don't like it.
Okay. How about Jennifer?
Oh, Jennifer Tilly. I love Jennifer Tilly. It's interesting because there's Jennifer Tilly that you see. It's like Marilyn Monroe, when Marilyn would have the voice that she would use and everything. And then when you see private things of Marilyn and she didn't talk like that, Jennifer's much like that as well. She had a lot of say in the beginning, and when I first worked with her in costuming, because we'd never worked together before, but then she started to trust me, and we were able to build some pretty fantastic, key, iconic pieces that worked. I did Cult of Chucky and Curse of Chucky.
Yeah.
And I will work with her any day of the week. Bring it on.
this this I'm just on the Call to Chucky on your page here, and this red coat that she's wearing with the doll, like was that off the rack?
No. We built that. I had wool brought in, special Italian wool brought in from here, laces brought in from there, and had somebody sketch a concept, cutters, stitchers, build the whole look to fit Jennifer perfectly, to make her comfortable and feel the part. And she has the most amazing shoe collection. So, she would always come into the fitting room and go, "Here you go," and open up the suitcase. And I would have Louis Vuitton, I would have Alexander McQueen. And so we would, she would bring the shoes, we'd do the outfits.
Oh, that's fun. That's somebody that's already halfway into the job.
Well, that's just it. And there's the first one where she's mailing off Chucky in the end. The first one I did with them, that was Curse.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun with that costume. Reached out to the woman that builds all of Dita Von Teese's corsets.
Oh.
And I had one done for Jennifer. And then I had in my private collection these ancient 1940s mink stools. So they're like full mink animals with the tail and the paws and the little mouths that open and close, little glass
I'm
eyes.
looking at that mink right now.
Yeah, and I stitched a whole bunch of them together so that as she walked, it looked like there was all these dead animals draping down her back. It was fantastic. Sorry, PETA.
Whatever. It's a
Yeah.
world. We're recreating
It's sustainable. It's
Yes.
sustainable fashion. They were from the 40s. They were period. They were already dead. So, fun things like that I got to do with Jennifer, and I missed doing that this time around. But other opportunities came knocking.
Yeah, no, totally. And I now that you've mentioned this Marilyn Monroe thing, like I know her from Chucky, but then I was a big poker fan for a while, and I saw her breaking pots against some of these pros, and I'm just like, oh wow. And then I've heard stories about how nobody wants to play her because she's just too damn good.
She's intense. I've watched her play. She sat in my office and played online, and she has that poker face down pat. She's won the bracelet. I'm not sure what it's called, but the women's championship poker something. And she knows her game, and her husband is also a poker player, and they travel, and that's their jam. They're both very good at it.
So before we let you go, you are more than likely going to be the closest I'll ever get to con. And as somebody who got to go there for their career, that's what I'm more interested in. Like, what was your experience? Because that is a highlight. You are at the film festival, not like it's the CIA of film festivals. It's the NSA of film festivals. Yeah. Everybody's there. I heard they did they do the JFK thing with Oliver Stone? Is that?
I went to it.
Okay, yeah. So you've been working. You leave Manitoba. You go to Vancouver. You find all this opportunity. Your career is coming to this point. Sean, like you're getting phone calls from Sean Penn. Come to my house. You're to accumulate all of this. Sitting at con, what's that like for you? What was that?
It was surreal. It was absolutely surreal. And we all walk the red carpet to get into the Palais, it's called, and I think there's 27 steps that you have. There's the red carpet and the 27 steps that you go up, and there's all of the bleachers on the side, if you will, full of reporters or photographers, whoever, journalists from all over the world. And it's intimidating. So my husband said to me, "You've never done anything quite this scale before. I've gone to the CSAs and the Gemini Awards, but nothing like this." And so we went and practice run. We went and watched how they did it the night before at another show.
Why not?
And the hardest part about it was just staying calm, because nobody knew who I was, and I knew that was going to happen. It was all about the actors and to watch all of that. But they picked us up from the Martinez Hotel in special black town cars. And we were whisked down the Croisette, which is the main road on the beach there in Cannes. And we were taken in behind the Palais, which is where all the films are held, and up this little road where we were dropped off at the end of the the red carpet and the flashes and the paparazzi and people shouting, and it was kind of incredible. But to walk the red carpet, my husband and I walked it, and I was looking over, and there's Spike Lee standing right beside me. There's Oliver Stone 10 feet in front of me, and all these other people behind me. I never ever thought a career moment like that would come for me, and I'm going to cherish it for the rest of my life.
Oh my God! All day long, I would daydream of that.
It was frightening. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. Do I want to do it again? Not right away.
Maybe once every year. Just get it in, get it out, wait and decompress.
Yeah. But we got to see some fantastic films. We got to. Cannes is very secluded from the rest of the world, and they have a lot of security set up. There was gendarmes walking with machine guns everywhere to make sure that all of these people are well protected, myself included. And so I feel it gives the actors, the directors, the producers, the ability to be private but be public and not worry about things. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I feel that from a distance, the ocean looks blue. No, sorry. From a distance, I feel that it's designed to be this intimate affair for the best film to be experienced with some of the most best qualified, talented people. And when you put all of that in a place, like, you kind of have to protect it because it becomes destination number one. So I get that, right? Like but at the same time, I mean, it is the most like Pulp Fiction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It also gave me an opportunity to totally geek out and not look like a geek, if you will, because I had all access to go to anything I could get tickets to. So I went to see as many films as I could, and we went to see The French Dispatch.
How was it?
Wes Anderson's film. I'm not going to tell you what I thought of it. I'm going to wait for you to figure it out.
Amazing.
I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan, but not everybody is. I'm not going to say any.
I appreciate that. No spoilers. I have a friend of mine who's quoted saying that Wes Anderson doesn't make films; he makes worlds.
So there's 4 different worlds within this one, which I will tell you about. But my husband and I went to the film, and we had to dress up again because all of these are tuxedo and formal dresses, and it was 42 degrees in the shade. And my husband turns to me, his name's Bob, and he says, "You think Bill Murray's going to come to this?" And I said, "Oh, come on. Bill Murray doesn't go to anything. He's Bill Murray."
Bill Murray.
And up pulls up this, like, think of a Greyhound Grey Goose bus.
Yeah.
And off, who's sitting in the front? Bill Murray. And, off gets Bill Murray, Timothy Chalamet. Who else did we see? Tilda Swinton, Benicio del Toro. I think everybody but Frances McDormand was there. And to be the geek on the side, I was inside the Palais waiting for them all and watching them all come in. It was just, that was pretty phenomenal. It was.
See, here's what's so great is that I remember there being a shot of Chalamet, Swinton, Murray, and Anderson together, and it this color swatch of like different styles and different clothing, and Bill Murray's just like, I don't give a shit. And Wes Anderson, Tilda Swinton looks amazing. Chalamet is wearing like the most current off the fucking catwalk that you could possibly find.
It was like gold, silver, what was it? I don't know, but we had to delay the filming or delay the premiere because Chalamet was outside with all of his fans still taking selfies with everybody. It was awesome.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see him in Dune. I'm so excited for Dune.
Yeah, what a great actor.
But I'm glad I see like that's a nod, Patti. Like, you're at Cannes behind Sean Penn, and people cheered your name when they saw it come on the screen. Like, I mean, what's beyond that for you? Is there much?
One of the producers reached over and held my hand, and he said, "Patti, it doesn't get any better than this." It doesn't.
No, I would imagine like you're being recognized on the world stage, not just at the Geminis in Canada, but you are a Canadian who has been plastered all over Cannes, and is it Cannes?
It's Cannes. Think beer can.
Beer can?
Yeah.
Okay.
When we got the package, the Cannes Film Festival sends it out to you. They have a little do's and don'ts, and they taught you how to say the word properly. It's
Sure.
can as in beer can.
What do you want people to know about you before we let you go? Where can they find your stuff? Is there anything you'd like to?
Sure. I want them to know that I'm still here. I have producers call that say, "You're not in Winnipeg. Did you retire?" I'm still here, and I want to work. I'm based out of Vancouver Island, but I will work anywhere. I've been talking to somebody about Berlin. Fingers crossed.
Nice.
That might happen. It might not happen. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to collaborate. Every day is a new experience. Bring it on.
Perfect. Well, everything that you want people to know about, I'm going to put your page. We'll put your website. It'll all be in the show notes. So if by some off chance some executive EP somewhere wants to hire you and they listen to the show, which I think would be great,
That would be fantastic. Yeah.
that'd be the best. We both win, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I do have a webpage, so I appreciate you putting that up there.
Well, our listeners dig this stuff for sure. I got nothing else for you. That's it. This was a pleasure, Patti.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I love podcasts, and thank you for doing one that's based on filmmaking. Love it.
Yeah, no, it's we do three things here. We do the debate stuff where we take real life and fake life and we combine the two. We take your characters and go, hey, could James Bond be a nanny? Could Conan the Barbarian teach sex ed? That's the stuff that we do that's fun, right? And then you actually use canon in real scenarios. And then we talk to you guys and have conversations about this. And I never would have thought I would have been such a big cheerleader for it. And I never thought I was going to do this, to tell you the truth. But now that I am, I'm like, I love the Canadian film industry. You guys are fantastic. You talk to us. So right off the hop, I'm just ecstatic that when I send an email, these are great questions. Let's talk. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. I'm not a piece of shit who's trying to fake it something.
No. And the thing is that we need to talk more about the Canadian industry as a whole. And for your listeners too, there's something called CAFCAD, and it's the Canadian Alliance of Costume Designers. We were finding that we were no longer getting nominated for the Canadian Screen Awards because they have to be all Canadian content. And now with streaming happening, you've got your Netflix and your Amazon and everything, our work no longer qualified.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it kind of is, unless you get into the Golden Globes, the Emmys, or the Oscars. And we have so much competition down south that's very rare for a Canadian to enter. I think Louis Sequeira for The Shape of Water was the last Canadian costume designer I saw get nominated. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course, with your fact checkers. But so CAFCAD, CAFCAD, CAFT. Check it out.
I will. It'll be up and down all over the page as well, for sure.
Thank you.
Let's make some noise. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a slice. Reeldebaters.ca. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to shut up about all this other stuff because it's just easier. Reeldebaters.ca. Go check us out. Everything we want you to look at's in the show notes. If you feel so inclined, I just knocked over my ring lamp. If you feel so inclined to donate to our cause because you like what you heard today, there's a donation tab, and there's also a prop shop tab there too. You can buy all of our merch, skateboards, t-shirts, hoodies, hats, laundry bags, socks. We have everything for the stocking stuffer all the way up to that cold cozy night. Find us on Instagram at Reel Debaters, on Twitter, Instagram, the Reel Debaters on Facebook. Patti, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Watch all the movies, kids. We're going to go away now. We're going to go enjoy a lovely Saturday afternoon. She's going to go choke, and I'm going to go work on my hot dog.
Yeah. Thank you.
Stick around for a sec. All right, guys. Bye-bye.